What's up, guys? Hope you're having an amazing day. Welcome back to the channel. Today in this video I want to talk about some inspiration, some books that I've been looking at, some books that I have that have really been inspiring, and books that I keep revisiting now and then just to kind of get myself inspired or just to enjoy and appreciate some good work. So in this video I want to show you guys 3 books. However, I'm going to go through just one of them, and the reason why is I don't want this video to be way too long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make separate videos on these books, and also you guys can let me know in the comments if you'll be interested in having a sit down with me and going through this book and talking about them and the inspirations that I get from them. I have 3 books here. I have Midwest Materials Co. by Julie Blackmon. I stumbled upon this book at a local bookstore called the Book Loft here in Columbus at the German Village. Sometimes you see a book and you just, by the look of the cover and just the writings on the side, you kind of get uninterested in them. But the moment I saw this book, I know there was something great in it, and so I took it from the shelf, flipped through, and of course I was very interested, and so I decided to get it and add it to the collection. The second book is this book by Vivian Maier. Of course, we all know Vivian Maier. If you don't, you're missing out. I have had this book for a while now. I've been wanting a book of Vivian Maier. I have gone through this book so many times, I don't even know how many times. And every single time I look through it, I feel like I'm seeing things for the first time again and again and again, because of how much good work is in here. So the third book that I want to talk about is An American Mile by Kyle McDougall. I've been following Kyle's work for a while now. I have been a fan of his work, his photography. At one point he started a podcast. I was a huge fan of his podcast. I'm not somebody who really like to listen to podcasts, but there is a few photography podcasts that I listen to, and his was one of those. And of course his YouTube channel. If you do not follow Kyle McDougall, you're really missing out. I will link all of this book in the description if they are still available, if I can find them, and then socials or anything information that I can find on these books, I will link them in the description below. But today I just thought let's go through Kyle's book because it's been very inspiring, and I have a few connection to it in a very different way that I didn't think I will. So in this book, Kyle McDougall talk about how at one point he felt like he didn't have the inspiration and the zeal of creating photos anymore. And from being from Canada, traveling from East Canada to West Canada, photographing landscape and stuff like that, he felt burnt out. And him and his wife decided to go on this road trip, which they made their way to the United States, and they drove through a few states, ended up in the southern of California. And that trip really just gave him the inspiration and the zeal of creating, the fun of creating images again. And I connect to this story because I remember back in 2018 when my daughter was born. Before then, I did a lot of drawings. I've been doing drawing my whole life. And in 2018, few months after she was born, I remember there was a piece that I had started working on before we had to take her to the hospital. Well, before we had to take her mom to the hospital for her to deliver. And after we got back home, because of how busy we were, I wasn't doing the drawing for some time. And then a few months later, when I went back to sit down to continue the drawing, I felt like I had lost the skill to draw. And even till date, I'm still struggling with it. But what helped me was, at that point, I had picked up the camera, and the camera gave me, that exciting of creating. For me, it wasn't about just creating photos, it was just creating in general, like just making anything. So for a long time, I fought it. I thought I wasn't creative anymore because I couldn't draw, and that is all I knew. I mean, I had done films, I work in a local movie industry back home. I've done short films and stuff like that, DP'd and all that. But what I did for myself mostly was the drawing, and I felt like I lost it. But picking up the camera kind of gave me that excitement again, the inspiration of creating. And even with that, if you've followed my channel for a long time, we started with street photography, and then at one point I started doing more portraits, and I kind of transitioned and brought what I used to draw into my photography, which is more portrait conceptual work. And with that also came with being burnt out a little bit, because with the type of work I do for my conceptual work, you need a model, you need to plan out, you need to make sure everything is set out right before you cannot just pick up your camera and go out and shoot. You need to plan it out. And when that became very hard to do, again, I was kind of feeling like I don't have the motivation to create anymore. And then I decided, okay, let me go back and do street photography. So I kind of bounced back and forth between those two, and now I can say, like, I know what to do when those moments start coming up again, when I feel like I'm feeling burnt out, which hasn't happened in a while now. But if I feel like I'm being burnt out, I just kind of switch the subject that I shoot. So I will go from doing conceptual work a lot to doing street photography to doing still photography. I don't do them all at once, because I strategically do these genres based on how I feel and how I'm feeling in that moment, and the inspiration that I'm getting. So that is how I connected with Kyle's book. Amazing images throughout the entire book. So I was going to bookmark them and like my favorite images in them, but there is so much that I'm like, okay, I'm just not going to do that. I'm just going to flip, and wherever the page flips to, you guys will see it. So you guys can just like take a look at it. But also I'll have, like I said, I'll have the link in the bio if it's still available, and you can find it. I will really encourage you pick one up. So I don't want this video to be too long, but yeah. One thing I love about this book is the images, like the composition in the images and the colors. Most of my work, well, now I'm doing more color work, but mostly I'd say I'm not that good with color, especially when I have to scan my own film. I really struggle with color. And so anytime I see anybody create a body of work that is so colorful, I just appreciate it so much. And again, I go back to the composition. Look at how he framed this metal pole with the building in the distance. Everything is done intentionally, you can tell. And you can tell, like, it's not just somebody driving around and seeing something and just jumping out and taking a photo. Really taking his time to compose the image very, very well. And that really makes me appreciate the work. I'm not saying like if you're doing snapshots that it can't be great, but the amount of time and effort you put in an image sometimes also adds to the value of it. And like I said, really, really, really appreciate this book a lot. So if you haven't checked this out, like I said, please check it out. Amazing book. I will read something here that Kyle wrote in this book, and then as I'm reading it, we can flip through and check it out. So he said, that spark that many of us often chase and become increasingly elusive, and on many trips, I had found myself frustrated by the lack of production. The images and approach that had fueled me for years no longer held the same appeal, but it was difficult to let go. When things had stopped working, I assumed photography might not be for me anymore. Rather than making changes and trying something new, with zero obligations and a blank slate, I spent the first few months of the trip working as I had always had, and not surprisingly, experienced the same struggles as before. After traveling across Canada from east to west, we headed down the US coast and eventually ended up in the desert, where we spent the next 4 months exploring Nevada, Arizona, and Southern California, which captivated me in a way that was different from everywhere else. It was particularly the rural areas where the road stretches as far as the eyes can see, and where very small town or back roads provide a certain type of intrigue, never knowing what you may come across. For years, I had worked in Canada's dense and often colorful forested landscapes. In complete contrast, I now found myself surrounded by wide open, desolate areas made up mostly of pale sandy browns and the blues of the open sky. Gone were the trees and lakes, now replaced by the empty main streets or the old structure or sign from the past. Those initial photographs in this new landscape were largely a product of curiosity, without determined ideas about what I was trying to say or where the project was going. It simply felt good to be creating fulfilling work again. So for him, it was change of location. Change of location inspired him to just kind of fuel his interest in creating images again. And that is a beautiful thing. Sometimes, we talk about what environment and gear and even books and stuff like this can do for our creativity. And everybody's whatever people take inspiration is different. Everybody has their own way of gaining back inspiration and stuff like that. So sometimes when you feel like you are in a creative slump and you feel like you cannot create anymore, if books are not doing it for you, buy a new gear. If that is not doing for you, try a new film. If that is not working, travel. Just like do something about it. But if you sit down and just say, oh, you're going through a creative block and you don't know how to get out of it, it's not just going to come back like that. You have to do something about it. And so this book is such an inspiration. Like I said, the colors, everything in this book is amazing. All right, guys, that is it for the video. I just wanted to share with you guys some books that I've been flipping through recently. I do have quite a few books, and so if you guys are interested, I'm going to start bringing them out so we can sit down and flip through it and just talk about the connection we have with the book and the inspiration that we get from it, or I get from it, personally, the inspiration that I get from it. So what this does for me is seeing someone who was going through, a creative block, a creative slump, felt burnt out from basically kind of being in the same environment and doing the same thing over and over again, and just needed some change and some maybe he wasn't even seeking out for that, but just going on a trip just revived his lost interest in photography. And it kind of inspires me to also keep going, and anytime I find myself in similar situation, remember that you have to just get yourself out there to be able to fuel yourself and get motivated. So instead of sitting down on the couch and scrolling through Twitter, Instagram, you know, those are good. Sometimes I see good work on there and it makes me want to take my camera and shoot. But flipping through a book is a whole different experience, and I really do encourage everyone, if you've not purchased any book ever before, you definitely should. And if you have to, and you have some books laying around, flip through them. Don't think you've take a look at them and so you are done with it. It's like something you use and you don't ever pick it back up again. No, flipping through these books will really inspire you and encourage you. And so I really do recommend Kyle's book, An American Mile. Go check it out. Like I said, I will link everything in the description if it's still available. If it's not, you know, you can keep digging and see where you will find it. You can also follow Kyle on Instagram and DM him and ask him where you can find the book. Like I said, very much recommended. Anyway, that's it for the video. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you got something from this video. I'll see you guys in the next video. But until then, go get yourself some books and have a great time. Bye-bye.